Lightwaves Radio is for all seekers of truth and anyone who seeks to understand the many mysteries of our place in the cosmos and life itself. We explore a variety of topics that we feel are most urgent and valuable at this time and strive to find real truth and solid answers through contemplating, sharing, and exploring experiences and understanding of the bigger picture.
We live in an incredibly exciting, new, and even awkward time in the history of our planet. History has been written and rewritten in so many ways, and truth hidden for so many reasons. It is a very real challenge to discern what is real and what is programmed in our society and lives. Together and through our mutual explorations and discussions, we have the ability to elevate our understanding and raise the frequency of our planet to a level that literally assists the evolution of humankind. There is so much we can do to make a difference for ourselves, our lives, and our future within the greater universal reality. Please join us in this journey of discovery.
Evolve your truth.
We are all here for a purpose. Let us discover what is within us and what we are yet to discover from without us.
Welcome to Lightwaves radio show Inner Circle. My name is Wendy Adams, and I want to thank you all for being here tonight. And I'd like to go ahead and bring on at this time my co-host, Max Crow. Welcome.
Hey, Wendy, how you doing?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Just got over like a major month-long illness, but I think I survived. I still have all my limbs, so it's a good, it was a good month.
Well, I'm glad you're feeling better. And today we have a special guest joining us, and his name is Eric Dubay, and he is an author of 3 books, and he's written Asbestos Head, Atlantean Conspiracy, and Spiritual Science. He's also an award-winning poetry writer. He's taught English, and he also teaches martial arts, so we're really looking forward to having him on. So let me go ahead and at this time welcome Eric Dubay. Welcome to Inner Circle.
Thanks. How you doing, Wendy?
Great. How are you?
Good, good.
How's it going, Eric?
Max? Good.
Great.
Hey, how's it going, Eric?
Great, man.
And Eric, you're actually originally from Maine, as I understand it. I want to ask you this. How did you end up in Thailand?
Well, my best friend in high school was a Thai guy. So in college, he invited me to come here for a month. And I just loved it. And I'd always kind of felt out of place in America. The increasing police state and a bunch of other things kind of made me want to try to travel around the world. And coming here as my first destination, I just kind of fell in love with it. Now I've been here for 8 years.
That's great. And now your most recent book that you've written is entitled Spiritual Science. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to see if we could talk a little bit about that first. Would that be okay?
Yeah, definitely.
Great. And now, in your book, you basically took classical physics versus modern or new physics, and you really did a great job, actually, breaking it down into layman's terms, and I think made like a handbook for life, really, with that. In your book, you asked and answered a few questions, and I wanted to ask you some of them on air. One of them is, who are we?
Who are we? Great
Exactly.
question. Yeah. I almost want to stay with the question for a while because answering it it doesn't do it service. So first of all, let's expound, think about it. Who are we? And maybe not answer it right away.
Okay.
Or who aren't we? Are we our physical bodies?
No, I don't believe that we are.
No.
No, I think that's the lowest form of what we are, actually.
Right. So what would be a step above that then?
Just something a little more cognizant of what we're giving back to the world, really, in my opinion. If we're thinking about it a little bit more, I mean, really anything above what we're doing right now is better.
So yeah, if we aren't our physical bodies, and it seems that way when you look at science, says that every cell in our body is replaced every 5 to 7 years. So if that's the case, how could any piece of us that that we take to be our intangible self that hasn't changed ever since we were a kid up until now, that little thing that we feel as I, it can't be physical if every physical bit of our body has changed over and over again since childhood. So there must be some sort of non-physical continuum, which people call the soul or consciousness. And it seems that that's, I'm getting a little echo, Max. Oh, there we go. That's better. Sorry. Hard to think. But yeah, it seems that there's an intangible part of us, and we transmit consciousness into our physical bodies through the brain, as opposed to consciousness coming from the brain, which is what classical physics says. Instead, I argue that consciousness is a priori. Consciousness is what comes first. And in fact, the one consciousness, infinite consciousness, God, whatever you'd want to call that, that would be the first thing before the Big Bang. Materialist science likes to take everything all the way back to a Big Bang. And before that, there was no space, no time, no matter. But then suddenly, for no reason, out of nothing, came everything. In this sneezing Big Bang singularity, everything comes from that. And so it starts with stars and suns and moons and planets, and then water, and then life comes out of the water and changes from form into form, from a fish to a frog to a monkey, and then to humans. And somewhere along all that, consciousness just magically comes into existence. That's the scientific materialist paradigm. They'd like you to believe that for no reason, nothing became everything we see today. And just because of physical evolution and adaptation with no intelligence behind it, life, intelligence, consciousness, and our complex internal immaterial worlds of emotion and thought and everything just arose by accident. And scientists have actually, mathematicians have done the odds against our universe evolving that way. Even in their paradigm, they say something like, if the physical forces that created life and everything were different just to the slightest degree, none of this would have evolved. And the chances are like 1 to the 22nd, 23rd power, something like that. So for me, that's quite an argument for intelligent design. And I don't even need an argument, to be honest. I can just sit, taste a mango, look at a sunset, hear children's laughter, feel an orgasm, and I can tell that this world was purposefully, intelligently created. And to me, it just seems silly to assume that the world was unintelligently designed and just through coincidental forces, everything came into being accidentally. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. It seems a lot more synchronistic than coincidental for me as well.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Like how do you go from, like you said, having nothing all of a sudden and one day, bang, it's all right there. The front lawn's all nice and manicured. Everybody's like living the perfect life. It just, it does come from thinking. It comes from, like you had said it best. It's like, how do you not have intelligence in the design if intelligence comes from part of the exposure to that life?
Exactly.
There's got to be some kind of there's got to be some intelligence behind that, backing it up.
And I think that's the originating thing, is that there was only intelligence, and that's what the Upanishads, the Vedas, the Bhagavad Gita, and all these other books, they talk about there being Brahma, which is the original one infinite consciousness, completely objective, all known to itself, omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent. And so imagine if that was your existence, what would you do? I mean, what do you do if, as an infinite being, all known to yourself, all powerful? The Upanishad says that, well, it gets boring. God got bored, and so the only thing he can do is to play hide and seek, to play make-believe, to take subjective packets of himself, create a physical world experience and then place those subjective packets of consciousness into other physical beings. So you get Wendy and Max and Eric and this dog and that cat and this tree and that rock. But in reality, it's all just Brahma. It's all just God. Think about it. No two trees, no two rocks, no two people are exactly alike. Yet we have names to define them, right? This is a tree and that's a tree, but this is not a tree. But really, no two trees are exactly alike. So when we classify them and we name anything, any noun that we give a name to, it's actually an abstraction. There really isn't a thing tree because every example we have of it is different. And it's the same with everything that we have a name for. So in reality, there is only one meta thing, which is everything, which is God, which is the universe, nature, whatever you want to call it. That's the objective, real thing. And then the maya, the illusion, is this feeling of I am and I am not, this feeling of separateness where you think you're Wendy and Max and Eric as opposed to Brahma, just having this subjective experience on this physical plane as this physical being. Yet in reality, we're playing hide and seek. We're experiencing and playing in this physical world because that's all there is to do when you're God. There's nothing else to do but to fake yourself into that you're God, and then fractally shooting down subject packets of your consciousness into little, physical beings that can all interact with each other. And then you have this cyclical nature of forgetting that you're God, and then suddenly, slowly remembering, hey, wait a minute, you're not Wendy, I'm not Eric. We're all God. All this is God. All this is one thing. Everything is in motion too. Is another point. From galaxies down to molecules and atoms, everything's in motion. Nothing is still. So if everything is always in motion, how can there be separate things? There's just one continual dance of this energy. So no two things are exactly alike, and everything is in motion. That's
So what you're saying, Eric, is
thing.
what you're saying, Eric, is that if there is a God, or God is up there and he's basically trying to figure out what to do next, basically what I'm saying is, like, if you got a God up there who's more or less trying to run a show and he's just looking down on this world like it's an experiment, like you had said, what is he going to do with all this free time? He's well scheduled out, but in this time he's got to create something to amuse himself. Is it possible to think that same God would create havoc and chaos and the way he gives free will to people? Is it not almost like a joke? Because he could easily fix the whole thing and say, you know what, everything's going to be great for the rest of your lives. When you die, it's all going to be peachy. Everything's going to be nice, all heavenly and billowy. But why? Why in our terms as people we have to have that fear factor in there? How are we controlled by that?
Well, to have the depth and breadth of experience that we have here, what God has to do is forget that he's a singularity, and he has to create this physical world, which we can clearly see is dualistic. Male, female, good and evil, inhale, exhale, sun, moon, day, night, sleep, awake. We've got all these dichotomies. It's a dualistic physical world that we're in. But God is not dualistic. God is singular. And so the singular objective entity gets bored of his nothingness and creates the physical world. I'm not necessarily saying that he's like up in the clouds watching the physical world, but rather that it's like we're all part of God's dream. Everything in the physical world is kind of happening inside the mind of this one infinite consciousness. And quantum physics has kind of proven that. We can go into that later if you want, but
that'd be perfect.
More abstractly, I've said, when you die, a piece of God wakes up and realizes that he was only dreaming. It's like when you're dreaming, you have all these different people, situations, different atmosphere, environment that you create, and there's all this drama going on, whatever. And then suddenly, boom, you wake up and you realize, hey, wait a minute, all those different people, that the world I was in, everything, that was just me. It wasn't separate people. It wasn't a separate world or whatever. It's just me. And that's what happens when we die. You realize that you're connected to everything. You are God. You are part of the oneness. You were just having this physical experience on this dualistic plane. Um, so to get back to what you're saying, the reason that we have to have evil or bad things or pain or all these other things and not just have it be this super happy wonderland is if it is that's how it is for God anyway. He's God, he's all knowing, all powerful, objective. Um, that gets boring. There's nothing to it. There's no separate thing. There's no story. What do you do with that existence? It, so they say it's necessary for God to separate himself into Satan, if you want to go by Christian terms, or evil or whatever, just so that there's a story, just so there's something going on. Otherwise, it's just infinite consciousness, completely known to itself, just existing in the ether. How is that? How, you know what I mean? The Upanishads literally said that God gets bored. They use the word
how do
bored.
how do you actually exist with that? Like what is existence if that's all you are? It's just a wavelength, I mean,
so the
it's got to be more than that.
The creation of the material world is almost an inevitability. It's what has to happen. God has to separate himself into a dualistic universe because there's nothing else to do. That's the logical thing to do if you're infinite consciousness.
And I guess what I'm saying, what I'm feeling there too is like if that is actually the case and God has to separate himself out, create this dualism of his dark side and his light side. I mean, and all these religions essentially fear you into believing that if you don't obey, or you don't stay in their order or stay within their scope, you can potentially end up on that darker side. And the fact is, I mean, if it is a game, if it's just a test that God or whatever the head is, the creator is doing. I mean, we're really looking at something here that if he knows he can't be beaten, it's like really what is the point of this fear factor that we're being thrown? It's just other than to just put that leash around our necks as a thinking being. When we made that step from one type of human to another type of human, where thoughts became important, thoughts became real and they stuck with us longer than 55 seconds. Ooh, look at the shiny thing. Or, ooh, look at the orange. That kind of crap. It's like, wait, there's repercussions? Wait, what is repercussions? How did I know what this word was? All of a sudden everybody started thinking about, how bad, reality is. I mean, because we got this fear in us now. And, we've just come to that level now of thinking in our decadent society that we live in that, this is normal for us. In reality, the first caveman who thought that, hey, I'm going to whack that human over there and drag him into my cave and whatever. That's a thought. There's no repercussions. There was no, oops, if I fail, what do I do? Where do I bury the body? There was no caring, So, yeah, I think that we're just a product of that, that stage after stage after stage of testing how long the leash is,
Yeah. And the fact that we're all one is what drives the mechanism of karma, or the golden rule, where you do unto others as you have done unto you. Because if, like I was saying, if everything is in motion and there aren't no two things that are alike, there must only be one thing, which is everything. And so when you consider yourself a subjective entity and you do something bad, say, to another subjective entity, you're really just doing it to yourself, right? If we're both God and I do something bad to Max, I'm actually doing it to myself. And near-death experiencers have said, all of them say that they have what's called a life review, where when you die, you have this intimate playback of play-by-play detail of everything you ever did in your entire life, run it on fast forward, slow motion, whatever, and you can even hear and think and feel the thoughts and emotions of everyone around you, everyone you affected within your life. And so if we're all one, whatever you do, that's your karma. There's no escaping it, because whether it be, at death or Or even sometimes right away, you'll notice you do something bad and karma kicks you in the butt right away. The reason is because we're all one. That's why karma exists. That's why it's a real rule. It's the only rule of the universe. It's the one thing. It's whatever goes around comes around. Because whatever you put into this physical world, you're gonna get it back, right? You're the creator. Um, these subject packets of consciousness, we're calling Eric, Wendy, and Max, they're pieces of God. They're very powerful. We are the creator. We're little packets of the creator, all co-creating this together. Like on some people can out of body experience and travel to different astral worlds while they're asleep, and like their whole world that they create by themselves. But this world here is co-created by all of us. And that's why when you think something, you have to really work towards making it manifest. You can't just think, I'd like an apple, and it appears in your hand. But in the astral realm, you can. You can, I want an apple, and there it is. This world, you have to co-create with all these other subjective entities. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. And I actually look at it a little bit differently than I think Max does and maybe some other people out there do. And I do believe that, yes, God does live vicariously through us, and that through our experiences, we're going to make decisions based on the small amount of free will that I believe that we're given, that he, in fact, probably wouldn't necessarily make. So he gets to experience everything fully through us in a different way. And I think that we are here for lessons and to grow God or to grow light within ourselves. And in doing so, he gets to experience that. And there is going to be bad things that are going to happen because we all have egos that are going to come into play. And I think that there has to be a certain amount of bad versus good in each of us, so that there can be that balance at all times. And that's why I do think bad things do occur. And then as far as I have had myself a couple of near-death experiences. And so, I realize that, there's so many people out there that are very skeptical about it. But I think that if you ask anyone that has had one, they're pretty similar in a lot of ways, although they're unique to that individual person. For me, the experiences I've had, I've never had a life review. And I know that others haven't experienced that. But what I did experience was a feeling of peace and love, and being told that I had to come back because I had more work left to do. And it wasn't actually a negative experience. There was no fear involved in anything that I experienced. It was beautiful. I actually didn't want to leave the other side, even though I had love for my loved ones here. There was no fear at all that I experienced in any way, shape, or form. It was, a euphoric feeling. It was incredible. And so I don't know, I guess I just look at it a little bit differently. There's no fear factor for me in that.
Yeah, every near-death experience account I've read, and I've read hundreds and seen video, they all say that there's no fear over there, and they're not afraid of death anymore because they, like, that world is like more real than this world, seemingly, and just complete and utter bliss, and like you said, peace and love. And you mentioned about the ego. It made me think, in the Christian version, there's Satan or Lucifer, and he's God's highest angel or something at first, but then he falls, and a lot of times he's associated with the ego. And to bring that into what we're talking about, I see it as, okay, God is Brahma, it's the one objective infinite consciousness, and Satan is his best angel, so to speak, because Satan is the evil part of the duality. If there's just God, there is no duality yet. So God has to create Satan or the evil. So like I said, so that we can have this dualistic universe, so that we can experience the breadth and depth of possibility. If there wasn't extreme evil and extreme good, and everything in between, if there was only, say, extreme good, then there's really no possibility. You're like robots. You're like angelic robots running on repeat. So Satan is good in the sense that he brings about the potential for infinite experience, but he has to fall. He has to fall into evilness. And so do we. We have to fall from being God to being subjective packets of consciousness in this physical world, humans, with the I am not experience of Eric, Wendy, and Max. And our ego is that Satan part, because our ego is the part that sees us as an individual separate from the whole. But in reality, we are the whole. We're God. We're not Eric. We're not Wendy. We're God.
Exactly. The
So
ego
the
is the
ego,
sum of our demons.
yeah, the ego is the selfishness, the
It's
individualized.
everything that we don't want to be, really. I mean, when it comes down to it, if we had a choice of being good people or bad people, I mean, unless you end up with a name like Hitler or, whatever, you know what I mean? Like you're born into the name Hitler, you're pretty much not going to be a cool dude. You know what I mean? It's not going to be in your car. You need to be treated well. So obviously, you know what I mean? It's if it's in your makeup, you can choose to be good, I think.
Right.
But
and like you were saying about free will, that's what's necessary. It's necessary that we have that ego and we have that evil, we have that satanic whatever aspect, so that it's our choice and that we learn to be good, as opposed to we're just robotic angels who must do good because there is no other possibility.
Now, see, I always look at it's kind of weird because I think that if you're gonna be a religion, all right. First of all, if I was gonna have my own religion, okay, I would go out and hire all the dudes that went and did all the cool ass album covers of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, that did all the metal album covers and be like, all right, you're my guys now. I want you to project that image of awesomeness rather than what Jesus got, what has God got, man? They don't have any real good art. It's all everything looks like a Da Vinci. Everything's like, oh, what was me? But you look at the metal album covers and you've got some awesome shit going on. Why is it? Why can't we have the same amount of energy going towards the PR for the goodness? Why does evil always have to be so dark but yet so appealing? I guess is really what I'm wondering about that.
Good question. Any insight, Wendy?
And I don't want to say this actually so appealing, although I guess it probably is to some people at certain times in their lives, but I think it's so necessary to bring about balance of good and light in people and dark. There has to be that balance. If we don't have that balance, then there wouldn't be any learning. And I do believe that although we are a part of the universe or God and that we are all connected as one, I still think that we're here to experience life lessons. And I think that without that, you really couldn't experience it fully.
Yeah, sounds about right.
That's cool. Definitely.
So have you ever had any kind of near-death experiences, Eric?
I haven't personally, no, but my fiance has had out-of-body experiences most of her life, and one of my friends has had a near-death experience, and I'm interested in it, so I've researched it a lot.
What have you learned about it?
Well, it seems a lot of people have similar experience, which is that they start to hear a buzzing or some sort of noise, and they start to lift out of their body, and they might see themselves laying there, but their real self is now hovering above their physical self, and so there's an instant realization that there's something more than the physical world for any near-death experiencer who was previously a scientific materialist. It usually shatters that right away.
Exactly.
And so then after that, often they'll stick around the physical plane for a while, looking at the speed of thought. You can just go wherever you think, and you can see your loved ones and whatnot. But then inevitably there'll be a tunnel of light or some archetypal transitional thing, like a bridge or crossing a river, something like that, and then you go through that tunnel of light, across that bridge, and then angelic beings or beings of light or some sort of consciousness meets you there and kind of directs you, talks with you telepathically, often takes you through a life review like we were talking about. Like you'd mentioned, they'll often, well, of course they always send you back if it's only a near-death experience and not a death experience.
Right.
It's an exit interview.
Yeah, everybody says that they're never afraid of death again after this, but they want to come back because they realize that they've still got lessons to learn, things they have to do here before they die. But inevitably, they're never afraid of death again, and they become usually much more spiritual, relaxed, peaceful, loving people as a result of it.
How many people do you think actually achieve that level of like, all right, I had a near-death experience, now I came back and I knew that I had a lot to learn. That's why I wanted to come back so badly, and now I'm back. How many people do you think actually follow up on that thought while they were in that near-death state, like, oh shit, I ain't done doing this. I got to go learn this. And now when they get back, they're like, whew, that was close, and then they're out. Right? And then they're, like, what do we do? All right, well, I'll just hold off. It's like, is it any different than that diet, the diet resolution we make every year at New Year's? You know? You say, I'm going to start working out this month. Okay, you said that last month.
I haven't experienced it myself, so I don't know, but
Exactly.
we can ask Wendy and everyone I've read. They seem to get on point. That they don't just receive all those insights and then come back and do nothing with them. They really
Right.
got a fire lit under their butt to do what they've seen.
Well, I can certainly tell you what happened with me if you like.
Yeah, definitely.
It was actually a near drowning when I was age 9, and my sisters and my cousins and I were all swimming in our above ground swimming pool. We all of a sudden heard it was a cloudy day, and we heard this loud rumbling, and it kind of sounded like thunder. And we had been told, by my parents, and my aunt and uncle had told my cousins as well, if there's any kind of sign of a storm or anything, to get out of the pool immediately. So when we heard the thunder, we were all kind of, swimming towards the ladder. And I remember having my hand stretched out on the ladder, and what actually had happened is the pool was tearing apart. That's what the thunder noise was. It was ripping, and it was separating, and it was separating right behind where I was. So I was holding onto the ladder. My legs were actually outstretched completely, and I couldn't hold onto the ladder anymore. And the current just kind of pulled me through where the pool was tearing, and I got sucked out through that hole and went all the way to the back of the yard, and all of the water from the swimming pool went over me. Then I remember the first thing, because I really hadn't been a very good swimmer and I had never been able to open my eyes underwater. So I remember saying, wow, this is really cool. I can actually see with my eyes open. That was the first thing I could remember thinking. And then I realized that I couldn't breathe. And then everything just went black for a moment. And then everything got really, really bright. And that's when I could feel myself kind of coming up out of my body. And I could feel myself going upwards. It was like I was going up high. And the next thing I remember was hearing this voice. And there was this person there. And he had this most amazing, incredible voice. And I just loved hearing that voice. It was incredible. As much as I loved my sisters and my parents and all my friends and stuff, just hearing that voice for one brief moment, I did not want to come back. And I remember being told I had to come back, that I wasn't done, I had more work to do. And me being age 9, I was like, well, it's summer vacation. There's no homework. I've got no work to do. I just didn't understand. And I kept being told, no, Wendy, you have to go back. You have to, there's important work for you to do. And I remember literally saying, no, I want to stay. And I'm probably one of the few that did want to, because I know everybody else is they did want to come back, but I didn't. I wanted to stay there. And the next thing I remember was waking up and my father was doing CPR on me, and I was back. And so it wasn't any kind of life review for me. It was just literally being told that I can't stay, that my time, it's not my time and I have more work to do. But it was a beautiful experience.
That's actually what most people say. It's not that they want to come back. It's just like you said, once they're there, they're like, whoa, they want nothing more than to stay there, but they're told that they have to come back and why they have to come back. It's always the same thing too. It's like, you got more work to do. Have you loved as much as you can possibly love? Have you learned as much as you can possibly learn? And the answer is always no. And so they're always ready to come back. And once they do, they are on point. So it sounds a lot like what you just said, the ones I've read about.
So given that fact right there, if you think about it, right, the whole basis behind religion could be, look, do whatever you want until you die. And then when you're ready to pass on to the next side, and you're going to have that moment where they're like, look, you really probably should spend a little more time learning this or that. When you get your get out of jail free card and you come back the second time, make sure you get it right. So, really, most people could do that now. Just look at it like, well, if I don't get it right perfectly the first time, I could get away with this or get away with that, and then you get there, you can make it up.
But the thing is
That's not the way to do it, though.
Right, right. The
Right.
thing is, everyone says that when they're in that space, it's very different than when they're in their body, in that their consciousness is much more expansive, and so they can't like fool themselves
Right,
or
exactly.
fool the angel or the being of light into thinking like, oh yeah, I did my best, man, even though I murdered and raped
Exactly.
and pillaged and everything.
I
I did my
can
best
see.
and I'll try again. Yeah, I know. And so
It's like Hitler. Who are you kidding, Hitler?
exactly. And so Wendy didn't experience it, but almost everybody experiences a life review, and you not only do you relive your whole life, you relive what everyone around you and who's interacted with you thought and felt. So if you were Hitler, if you were someone that was a real negative person and you had a negative influence on lots of people, you'll have to experience that yourself. So even if you're a psychopath and you can cut yourself off from compassion during your physical lifetime, when it comes death experience time, you're going to feel compassion. You're going to feel exactly what everyone else felt because of your negative deeds and stuff. And so that's the karma right there. And
That's
when
an interesting way of looking
reincarnation,
at like a serial killer. Like that's something that they would have to deal with. Like in life, they could be totally, remorseless where they don't have to care about it, but it's that one moment where they get caught, where they realize they're on the hook now. That's that moment where it's all coming back to them.
yeah, there's no escaping it. You can forget about it for a while, but when you die, you'll remember everything. And when you're reincarnated, it'll be part of your karmic pattern that decides how you're reincarnated, what life you'll live. Ultimately, you decide, but like I said, you're in this expanded place of consciousness where you're going to choose things that are appropriate for you. And so if you spent your life being negative to people and doing a lot of negative things, you are purposely going to create a next life for yourself, which has opportunities for you to resolve those things that you did poorly. So, whatever, maybe if you were Hitler, you might be born as a Jew or something like that. But it wasn't the universe that forced that to happen. It was you from your expanded place of consciousness, having felt what everyone else felt because of the way that you acted in your last life. You decide, I need this for my soul. I need this experience. This is what I need next to evolve. Do you know what I mean?
Right. And so you do definitely believe in reincarnation then?
Yeah, especially after researching and writing this book. I kind of had an inkling towards it beforehand, but after reading several books on the subject and just reading case after case after case of these kids that they're born and they remember intimate details of their past life and then can confirm it even and go see these people, go see their old wife, go see their children, remember their faces, remember their names, remember where there's gold hidden under their backyard, remember exactly where the house is, remember the friends of the family and nicknames and places around there that they've never been ever in their lives. But when these children are brought there, they can, remember all of these things, and they turn those other people into believers. Like the ex-husband whose wife has died and been reincarnated into this little girl, has no doubt in his mind that that's his ex-wife because she knows all these things that nobody else could possibly know. Only the two of them knew, and this little kid remembers it. Do you know what I mean? That there's just hundreds of these cases. It's amazing.
Exactly.
I actually read a case where there was a kid who, and this is something that wasn't related to a near-death experience, but it almost has to do with the state of mind that you go into when you're having a moment like meditation or near-death or a psychic event or, even sleep in itself. Where this kid, it was a child, and I'm probably saying this the wrong way because it would have worked better as a punchline later on, but this kid came out of the dentist, okay, and he actually was under anesthesia for a while, and when he came to, he was asking questions about, his wife and if she had been with him the whole time during the operation and things like that. And the kid was 11 years old, and he was describing for the doctor, what his wife looked like and how old he was, and like really just basic information. And it was almost like the anesthesia had broken down some sort of doorway between his conscious being of this world today and this life today of a child, and then another door, or that same doorway to another key point someplace, in another life, essentially. And I always thought that was interesting because, have you ever heard of a chemical called DMT? I believe it is called. It's actually a drug, believe it or not, but it can be manufactured into a drug and utilized the same way you use any other kind of, I guess, recreational drug. But it's something that's actually produced by the human body naturally as well. And no doctor has ever known what this drug is for. They know that the body emits this into the system during certain events. It helps you relax. And I was wondering what your thoughts might be on that. DMT, how do you feel about how that helps bring you into that state of mind for things like meditation and a spiritual event or a psychic event or even just sleep in general, and how it brings you into that lucid state of mind?
Yeah, I wrote about that in two of my books, actually. So DMT is produced by the pineal gland, our third eye, there in the middle of our brain. And the first burst you ever get of DMT is when you become a fetus, from being an embryo to a fetus. It's on the 49th day of conception, after conception. On day 49, your pineal gland has this big burst of DMT. And after that is when the embryo officially is a fetus, and when the gender of the baby is determined, is right then. And Rick Strassman, who wrote the DMT, the Spirit Molecule book, he made this correlation, which is amazing, that Tibetan and Chinese funerals last 49 days. Like the Tibetan Book of the Dead, they have these things you're supposed to read to the deceased every day to help them on their transition into their next body, into their next life, to forget this life, to forget these people in this body, and to go into the next one. And the traditional long Chinese funeral is a 49-day cycle, and it's on the 49th day after conception that seems that the soul enters the human body through the pineal gland, the third eye. And that's also where it's said to exit during out-of-body experiences and near-death experiences. And so you have a burst 49 days after conception. You have a burst of DMT every night while you sleep, and it kind of trips you out into dream states. And the biggest burst you'll have in your life is at physical death. The biggest DMT burst, biggest natural psychedelic experience you'll ever have is when you die. And so that's why people under anesthesia, like you said, will sometimes come out of their body, and they'll even remember things from other lives and whatnot, because their connection to the physical body is being severed, so to speak, by those psychedelics, by those entheogens. That's one of the things they do. Psychedelics, they make your spirit less connected to your physical body. I took magic mushrooms once, and my consciousness shot up like 10 feet above my head. So I was sitting there meditating, and suddenly I opened my eyes, and everything I see is and hear. I was hearing from that vantage point as well, like I'm 10 feet above my actual physical head. So someone talking into my ear sounds very distant to me, and when I go to look at them, I'm looking at the top of their head. And that was one of the main things that shot my scientific materialistic worldview. After that happened, it was sure I was on mushrooms, but I was cognizant enough to be fully in that experience and to experience seeing and hearing from a vantage point that was not inside my head. My consciousness shot up there. So anyway, with DMT, when you die, boom, you get a burst of this psychedelic substance, and it seems that it's a chemical, but it's got spiritual properties. It seems that what is necessary to happen at death for us to leave our physical bodies is that we have to go through this kind of psychedelic experience to leave our physical body. And that's what's happening with the DMT burst at death, is that your consciousness is psychedelically shifting out of the physical realm, out of your physical body. Then you're going to go through the near-death type stuff, and then you'll go through the new life creation stuff where you decide what you're going to do with your next life. and then boom, 49 days later, you're going to find yourself in a new DMT burst psychedelically inside somebody's womb, getting ready for your next lifetime. Um, that seems like with the 49-day cycle and the DMT burst and my own psychedelic experiences, as crazy and as that sounds, kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah, it does definitely. And so would this explain like in like a near-death experience, because you're obviously going to have some kind of a burst occurring, how people, when they do come back, they do have memories of the past lives and things that they may not have had before they had that experience, or maybe enhanced abilities?
Yeah, but also it's kind of dreamish, like any psychedelic experience. When it's finished, you don't have vivid recall of play by play of every moment. It's more just little glimpses of where you can remember, and that's seemingly what most people say about their out of body or near death experiences. That
It's all about the highlights.
yeah, exactly. They just have highlights.
It's a highlight footage reel.
Exactly. That's incredible.
It's usually a good montage scene on YouTube. And usually lately it's been mostly like epic fail videos though, all montaged together. I think that would, if you could take like a whole, look at humanity, I think that would be the life montage of humans. Just these moments of just destruction. I mean, why are we so bad to each other? I mean, when spirituality is so easily obtainable, I mean, really when you think about it, it just takes relaxation and putting the mind in the right place and all these ways that are designed into us as a human being to produce these types of chemicals in our own body, and we resort to other kinds of drugs. And I'm not the kind of person that's going to say that any alternative mode of enlightenment is a bad thing, but it has its points and it has its purposes, and some things do, some things don't, obviously. But anything that can help you expand your mind, I think, really, and with the LSD and the psychedelics of the 60s and that whole thing coming into it, I mean, really the way it was designed was to just, they feared it because it allowed you to open your mind. It took you to a different level of thinking. That dot on the piece of paper was no longer a dot, it was whatever you wanted it to be. And I think that when it comes to psychedelics and you're talking about conspiracies, I think that's kind of one way that they use fear. They use psychedelics. They use the mindset. You know what I mean? That fear, because you could, if you've done it, that you could trip very hard, very badly. You could trip very nicely, very peaceful, depending on the mind that you're in, depending on the people that you're with. But like I said, it really comes down to what we get as a society to call our mind altering drugs. I mean, think about where these things are being made. If they're not being made in our brain, first of all, why are we taking them? And if they are being made in our brain, why are they illegal? And if it's being grown in the ground and it says it in every book available that says this is the law of some god or another, that we're allowed to use this, well, why can't we use this,
Like Bill Hicks said it best, doesn't making nature against the law seem a bit unnatural?
Exactly.
These things are naturally growing in every climate. All over the world you can find psychedelic substances. It seems like we're meant to use them. Otherwise, it's quite a big mistake, like to just accidentally leave these things everywhere, all over the world. Is it a coincidence that things like cigarettes, pharmaceutical drugs, and alcohol are all illegal, but things that grow naturally upon the earth and expand your consciousness, like magic mushrooms and cannabis and peyote and ayahuasca and stuff, these are all illegal, in most places.
Exactly.
Still there? I got a really bad delay. Thought I lost you guys. Thailand, come in, Thailand.
Over, Roger. We're here.
Roger. Right. So, okay, so you, how hard was it for you to make a jump from being, I don't know, have you been a vegan all your life? I mean, with being a fighter, you gotta have some kind of, obviously you're martial arts, so you're more of a disciplined, not that every fighting style is not disciplined in one degree or another, but, at what point did you decide that you could get enough out of eating vegan to kick the shit out of somebody if you really had to in a fight? It's like having a hemicuda and putting, ethanol in it that's not like 110 octane for drag racing. You know, what's the point of having all that engine without enough power to run it?
Yeah. I wasn't vegan my whole life. Regular standard American diet for most of my life. But Shaolin martial monks, those Shaolin monks you see, that they're all strict vegetarians. None of them eat meat.
At the same time, they don't talk though, right? So how could you even order meat if you're a monk? I think
Right.
that's good, right? Seriously, if it's like we can't talk, we've taken a vow of silence and celibacy, which really, really sucks in both directions, and we can't even order meat at the local market because we can't talk. So that's
What?
really not that hard after a while if you think about it. Kind of
But,
built right into the whole thing,
but they can break boards and irons and
and that's
stick
what makes it all
spears in
worth it.
themselves.
I think you
They
could
do a
give
lot
up
of
all those things
incredible.
to be able to just, you know, take your hand and dip it in glue and then stick it in glass and then just go to town. You know? Yes, bring on the Shaolin monks.
So do you think
And
it
I mean,
helped you, Eric?
oh, definitely, definitely. I mean, the strongest animals in nature, gorilla, hippo, rhino, giraffe, they all just eat grass and vegetables. They don't eat meat. They're really strong. You wouldn't mess with a gorilla, and you wouldn't tell the gorilla that he needs to eat meat to get more protein in his diet. Otherwise, he's not going to be strong enough. Um, and the whole protein thing's a myth anyway, because there's more protein in spinach and most leafy green vegetables than there is in steak or any meat or dairy for that matter. Um,
So Popeye was a vegan, you think?
not sure, not sure, but he
Right?
was onto something with the
Because he's
spinach.
exactly, he was always up in the spinach. So that's actually pretty cool. I know Wendy had a bunch of questions about the vegan aspect of it, and I wasn't sure if you were going to get into that specifically at one point or another. But was there any other questions that you had about, the situation with vegan and how it's approachable towards, like, how would you say? There's a good one, Wendy. I don't know if you have this or not, but how would you say someone, to somebody who has never even tried to be a vegan, never even tried to be a vegetarian, let alone a vegan? Explain first of all, explain to people what the difference is between being a vegan and a vegetarian, and then how would you approach somebody and say, look, I know, if you knew a guy in your real life who was like, who I actually needed it, how would you go about that guy and say, look, you're a buddy, but I got to tell you about this. How would you approach somebody who never did it and say, this is what you need to do?
Well, the definition, vegetarian, just you don't eat any meat, and vegan is you don't eat any animal products. But I think these words tend to they don't help people very much because you don't necessarily want to just cut out meat completely or cut out dairy right away and then give yourself a new label and now I'm a vegetarian, I'm a vegan,
Exactly.
and because when you do that you've been eating one way your whole life, and to just go cold turkey, pun intended, vegetarian, vegan, whatever, you'll often slide back or just say forget it altogether because you're still addicted to the meat and the hormones and the other things in the meat and whatnot. And just taste-wise, convenience, price, lots of times it's just easier to eat what everyone else is eating socially, to eat what everyone else is eating. So it's more of a process and a transition to go from eating dead corpses and chicken periods regularly to saying, I'd rather not eat a chicken's menstruation. I'd rather not kill animals and eat their corpse. And then to start finding that fruits, vegetables, grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds, when you have a diet composed mainly or only of those, you start feeling a lot better. You start to detox all this other crap. You get a lot more energy, get a lot more clear-headedness. You don't have to sleep as long. I'm a bodybuilder. I've actually put on more muscle since I stopped eating meat. I can't think of a single disadvantage to going vegan unless you're doing it wrong, which a lot of people do, in that you can be vegan and still drink Coca-Cola and eat Pringles every day. It's just not healthy. So it should be synonymous with health, but it's
I
not.
love those kinds of people, by the way. Those people make me laugh. I mean, they really do. I mean, not that I don't try to judge too often. I mean, every chance I get, but it's crazy because you're standing behind somebody in the store and they're like, they're talking about eating healthy and they're ordering their doctor, the diet doctor this and diet whatever this and that, and and that there's no way that they could possibly be getting anything out of that when they're ordering the big giant gulp, or here you got the light fat mayonnaise on your pastrami hoagie. Great job. What the hell? I mean, it all comes down to the yellow and the orange in this country. It really does. What fast food companies advertise with yellow and orange? And then look at those, and then see they're the ones with the most sales. They're the ones that are bringing us in. Why is ketchup yellow and mustard orange? Or yellow?
Yeah.
Or ketchup, you know what I mean? Why is ketchup red? Yeah, exactly.
and red too, so like red, orange, and yellow. Those are
Yeah,
the
you know what I mean? Like, if you think about it, McDonald's is red and yellow, Burger King is red and yellow,
those are
Pizza Hut,
those are the
red and yellow.
lowest chakra colors, so they coincide with our base desires. So it's interesting that the fast food that's giving you some of the worst meats and everything, they advertise using those base vibrational colors.
Absolutely. And it's all by design too. It's all totally by design.
Sure.
I mean, if you think about it, and then look at the health companies. Like, if you look at the logos for the health, health providers and health this and health that, it's never anything of the same color that's giving you the problem. It's never the flashy color of Coke or the flashy colors of McDonald's or Burger King or Pizza Hut. It's usually like blues and greens and like the colors of illness and wellness, and like the logo is blue. Why? Because blue's comforting. I feel down and I feel good now that blue has my back. I
green,
feel like
green is the
right.
Green is
Blue,
the heart
green,
chakra
green.
color. It's the middle vibration on the
Exactly.
color
So
spectrum, so it's balanced, right? So it gives you that feeling of balance and peaceful. Like nature is mostly green. So sure, that's how you wouldn't want to have violent colors on your medical establishment. But you notice they have these
Right.
that caduceus, which is again a chakra thing. The pole is your spine. The snakes going up the pole are the kundalini, your kundalini energy, the non-physical sexual energy that goes from the base of your spine up to your crown chakra. And then the snakes, every point that they intertwine is a chakra point up to the orb, which is the enlightened third eye, and the wings, which is the crown chakra. So the symbol, the caduceus that they use for the medical paradigm is actually totally a spiritual symbol referencing chakras. But they hijacked it and used it for their very material, physical, chemical
Exactly.
medicine. Because I mean, medicine really, it's a mind, body, spirit thing. It's not just a body thing. Like they'd have you believe, even just something as simple as the placebo effect proves that illness is not just physical. 30% of all diseases can be cured by giving a patient a pill that they think will help them, but really it's just powder or sugar tablet. And because they think that they're getting the cure, they think themselves better. And these illnesses really do go away just based on how you're thinking.
Yeah, it's all mind over matter. It really truly is mind over matter. I mean, if you feel yourself getting healthy, I mean, are you not feeling that? Is that not really something that you're actually, experiencing? I mean, if you're good enough at it and you can focus enough on it, yes, it is possible. I mean, I know this for a fact. Wendy's had some experience in that end of it, haven't you, Wendy?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really big on hypnosis for self-healing. And I mean, I had an experience last year where I had gone to the eye doctor, for example, and everything was fine earlier in the year. And all of a sudden I had trouble seeing. And I went back a couple of months later and they told me you have a full-blown cataract on your eye. And it's really bad. And normally it takes years for these to ripen. It normally is for older people. And you have to wait for this, several years for it to reach a certain point before they can remove it. And in this case, it happened within a 3-month time frame. And so I had to have a surgery to have, the cataract removed. And during the surgery, I could hear, the surgeon. I could hear him talking, boy, I've been a surgeon 26 years. You're really making me earn my money, Wendy. I could hear him talking to me. And I knew something was wrong. And he's like, I need another drill bit. I need another drill bit. And normally when they remove the cataract, it just kind of peels apart and it's very easy. But for some reason on me, it was like as hard as granite. And he went through 3 drill bits. And this 10-minute surgery, it was over an hour for me. And when I went for the follow-up, they had told me, Wendy, there's something that you need to know. You're not going to be able to see out of your eye. And I'm like, I think I can. It's like, no, we've consulted with 6 surgeons. They even got someone in from Switzerland, an expert, to consult on the case. And they said, no, you've lost your sight in this eye. And I'm like, well, I really don't think so. And the only thing that I had done from the time I came home to recover is I was using self-healing hypnosis and putting my hands on my eye trying to heal it because I felt like something wasn't right. And what, my eye doctor was trying to do is prepare me for being blind in that eye. And I was like, no, I'm sure I can see. And he's like, well, we're going to take the bandages off. He's like holding my hand, preparing me for the worst. And I'm telling him, no, it's fine. He's like, Wendy, you need to understand that there's nothing connecting on your eye right now. There's no way you can possibly see in this eye. You don't understand this. And he's going over and I'm like, just take the bandages off. Let me show you that I can see. And so he finally did. After 10 minutes of telling me I couldn't see, took it off and I could see. And he tested my eyes and I could see better than my other eye, which was pretty darn good already. And he was just dumbfounded. Like, how is this possible? There's nothing connecting. There's no way for you to see. And the only thing that I did was, self-healing.
That's great. I love those stories. I read so many stories of medical doctors who didn't believe in any of this out-of-body experience, near-death experience crap, and they wanted to get to the bottom of it because they had so many patients telling them that they were floating in the corner of the room for the whole operation, and they saw this and that, and it was getting uncanny and eerie for them because they couldn't believe that the patients could know the intricate details of what they said and what they were doing during the operation. And inevitably, all these doctors, once they interviewed their patients, they all became believers that they really did come out of their body and their consciousness was awake and active and able to hear and see everything. Even traveled to different rooms in the hospital and hear and see what other people are doing. And even blind people who die have been able to see while they're out of body and confirm the things they've seen. And then when they come back after their near-death experience, they're blind again.
Right. That's incredible.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Can you imagine, like, it's like, I had a few minutes of coolness, man, and now I gotta go back in the bottle. What the hell? And imagine being a blind guy who dies, and he's, like, being sent back by whoever's on the other end saying, you haven't learned everything you need to learn. Like, what are you talking about? I haven't learned. I've been blind all my damn life. I get here, and you guys are sending me back to hell? I don't get this. Sorry, I just couldn't resist that one.
Of course. No,
that's a good story, though, Wendy. That shows that, he was operating in the physical paradigm. He's saying, physically, there's no way that you're going to be able to see. I know this. And you're like, experientially, no, I can see. And you just prove him wrong based on some non-physical thing that he can't make a formula or some chemical to to describe what's happening. He just has to accept that there's some sort of non-physical, spiritual connection between our perception, our internal consciousness, that whole world, and the physical world, which he probably hadn't accepted before and might be on the way to doing when he comes across people like you.
Yeah, definitely. He had me come in for follow-ups 3 times a week for 8 weeks following because he was so sure at any time it was just going to stop. And I was like, no, and it's not going to stop. It's going to just get better. And I was just like, I'm going to take the positive route. I'm going to be thankful and I'm going to say, yeah, maybe it is a medical miracle or maybe it's just, spiritual healing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, Eric, how do you feel about like excessive amount of electric energy being blasted into a body? And do you think that would enhance any kind of abilities? I mean, like if you're a very spiritual person or, any of these things that we've talked about as far as the spirituality and the science of it, like, what makes you, the DMT, that type of thing. I mean, do you think that getting hit with, say, lightning, because I Wendy has another story about lightning she could probably tell you too.
Um, she's actually one of the few survivors of lightning. But, ever since this has happened, she's had this like extreme ability, awareness, just, um, I don't know. It's almost like a supercharger.
That's interesting. I've never heard um, I mean, I've heard stories of people getting hit by lightning, but I've never heard any sort of other aspect to it other than the physical. I've seen it on TV and they're in the operating room and all that, but I've never heard anything like, oh no, I got a supercharge of energy and now I have supernatural abilities. That
Yeah,
sounds
yeah.
pretty cool.
Do
Let's
you
hear
want me
about
to
that.
you want me to
Yeah.
bore you again?
No,
Yeah,
it's not a
please.
bore, actually. It's a good story, but it's not
Well,
really
Sounds
like
like
it's all of a sudden that happened. I mean, it's not like she woke up one day, pushing a cart in the parking lot and all of a sudden, then she has a cape on flying around saving people. It's not like that, but I mean, it literally enhanced what she was dealing with already in her past quite a bit. So, I mean, Wendy, and it's not a boring story, actually. It's actually quite interesting because, not very many people get to say they survived that type of thing.
yeah, that
right.
sounds cool.
Well, first of all, I should say that, like, I've always had psychic ability. Ever since going back to like the age of like, 1.5, I've always had abilities. And as of age 5, I was able to realize that I could communicate as a medium with those who had passed. So I did have abilities my whole life. And after the first near-death experience when I almost drowned, that was when things got more enhanced for me. Before that, I knew when something was going to happen and I could communicate with those who had passed on. After that near-death experience, I came back stronger with more abilities. I could at times, telepathically know what people were, thinking, and I could, very empathic. I could feel what they were feeling. So I already had all these kind of abilities, and they had been, with me my whole life. So I really don't know what it's like to be without those. But a few weeks ago, actually, I was with my son, and it was taking him to school in the morning. We stopped at the grocery store first, and there was a lot of lightning going on, and then there was a lot of flooding that morning too. Like we're, driving into school, I'm driving in 3 feet of water. So, I mean, it was flooding and lightning. And we're walking out of the store, and he's pushing the cart. And I said to him, you know, I need you to hurry up and get in the car, honey. I really feel like lightning's coming. So he took off running, and he was right in front of me. And right where he was standing is right where I was now at, and that's where the lightning came down. And I could see it, just narrowly miss him. I could literally see that. And the next thing I actually experienced was kind of strange because I literally was actually saved by like an angel, because I was literally hugged and I could feel like the wings wrap around me, and I could hear a voice talking to me and just kind of soothing me. And afterwards I had like an imprint of almost like a hand like on my shoulders. And it was definitely like from where the wings were, because out of the corner of my eye I could see it wasn't like a hand, and it was completely bright. And I just know, and I looked up and I could see it was just this beautiful face that wasn't, it didn't look male or female, but it was just beautiful. And like literally I was just like saved from it.
Do you know if it was the same voice that you'd seen in your near-death experience?
It was the same voice, yes.
Wow. So it's like your angel or something, your guardian angel.
It it has to be, because I mean this is, the second time I encounter that same that same being. And so I'm saved twice, and I'm still like, waiting to find out what is the this amazing purpose, because it better be pretty damn good to save me twice. But Max is right. Since this happened, my abilities that I already had that were pretty good, pretty strong, have been more and more enhanced and honestly out of control. Um, I mean, should we tell him, Max, what happened to you when I got a little angry with you? I think you should share that.
Yeah, well, that was pretty interesting. Wendy had we were having the classic, argument over, the sky being blue. Is it blue? Is it red? That classic argument. And of course, I was wrong. And Wendy got a little bit upset and kind of just whipped her hands up in the air a little bit, I guess, over on that end. And we had already hung up the phone at that point, and I had literally gotten blown back off of my feet into a chair and knocked over the chair. And I'm a fairly agile guy. I'm a pretty big guy, and I've always been top heavy, but I've always been light on my feet, and I've never been knocked over. I was a football player, and I can handle a hit, and I got knocked on my ass pretty thoroughly, and I kind of sensed something was going on.
Yeah, the
So
next
you,
time he talked to me, he's like, "Were you a little upset when we hung up the other night?" And I was like, "Yeah, actually, I did. I put my headset down and I just flung my hands in the air. Why?" And that was when he told me, and I felt so bad.
for
So you
about
felt
3 seconds.
you felt like a push, Max. You felt like a
Yeah,
push.
actually, I literally felt like a pressure shoving my front of my body. Like it felt like everything on the front of my body just went boom. Like if you can imagine, if you put your hand on your chest and just shoved your chest right now, like wham, that's what it felt like across my whole front of my body.
And so between the two of you, how much doubt is there that that was Wendy that made that happen?
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind. There's no doubt
Very
in my
cool.
mind.
I had some
I know.
doubt
Not me.
because I didn't want that to be true.
I know. We're hoping. No, you had more hope than you had doubt. You were hoping it wasn't true, and you were doubting that it was. It wasn't. Is what it was. No, I felt that pretty good, and and I knew what it was. I knew exactly what was going on, but I also knew at the same time that when you have that ability, it is really hard to control if there is anger, and there's a moment of release. It's not a very easy thing to control anyway. The mind. I mean, think about how many people get by every day just using its very basic, minimal amount of power. That was pretty much everybody. And they seem to be doing okay for themselves so far. But, somebody with a little bit of skills could really do some damage if they really wanted to.
So,
Exactly.
Wendy,
Hmm.
did you have any inclination that something supernatural had happened before Max told you?
Actually, no. I wasn't that angry, honestly. Like, imagine if I had been really angry. That was just like a slightly little annoyed. And
So then I won't tell you about the time you set my foot on fire then.
come on now.
Right.
No,
My
but
neighbors know all about it though. It sets off their fire alarm every 3 days. So,
when he actually told me what happened, I actually saw a vision of it happening, so I knew that he was telling me the truth and it had in fact happened. But during that time, no. Like I didn't feel any kind of drain of energy at all. I just, I was just angry and literally just for a couple of minutes. It wasn't like it was a big fight or anything. It was a slight annoyance for me. But needless to say, I'm keeping my hands down when I'm annoyed.
Well, in
so
mythology, isn't it like Zeus or Thor or whatever that harnesses the lightning, and he uses that when he's angry. And so
that'd
you
be
got hit
Zeus.
by you got hit by Zeus. You got hit by Zeus's angry lightning, and now you can transmit it through
I
anger.
think so.
So no more making me mad, Max.
Yeah, well, I don't know if that's possible. It's me you're talking about here, so I don't know. But yeah, that's actually it's interesting to see. Like, I looked at it immediately when I heard her tell me the story about getting struck by lightning, that I was in big trouble at some point because he supercharged that up, and I knew it was going to come down the line. But more than that, I think it really enhanced a lot of the normal abilities that Wendy was having before. Just the visions and the everything else that was you were experiencing seemed to have picked up. And there was a few days of the envelope where you really just the first couple of hours talking to you after it happened, you literally were senseless. Like there was some things going on in your mind that you're like, I said, well, I'm about ready to talk to Jerry, and you said, oh yeah, Uncle Jerry. I love my Uncle Jerry. I'm like, you do love your Uncle Jerry. Let's go talk to Uncle Jerry. No, it was great because I was like, how much anesthesia did you have today at the doctor's? One of them kind of deals. I'm like, you're kidding me, right? But no, it really was. It was really kind of odd because there was that moment of catching up to herself and getting back into the swing, and I look at it like a learning curve.
Well, what was really kind of strange, and I'm not sure if other people experienced anything like this, but it was like I literally felt like it wasn't me. Like it literally almost felt like I want to say like a higher version of me kind of stepped into me because it was still me, but I felt different about things. And I felt this need to feel like I was floating again, like I missed it. And I saw like faces of people from the other side that I knew that like I had these intense feelings for and this caring for who I had never seen their faces in my life before. And, I have a pool in the backyard, and literally spent 6 hours just, swimming around and floating because I needed to have that feeling of floating again. I was missing it. So a lot of kind of strange things occurred after that as well.
Have you ever used a flotation tank?
No, I haven't.
So there's a device that puts you in complete darkness. You go inside of it, lay down. It's a tub of salt water, and it's at your body temperature. And so you lay there, and you basically induce a psychedelic experience from this feeling of you don't feel your body anymore. And where was I gonna go with that? Lost my train of thought.
My need for feeling like I was
It's okay.
floating.
No, I know exactly what you mean. You have this moment where you literally feel like there's nothing, like there's not even the experience of you standing. Like imagine all the muscles in your body that you utilize just standing or breathing or holding your body up, sitting up in an upright position. When you're in one of these flotation tanks, you literally feel like there's no pressure on you except equal pressure all around your body from the water outside. I mean, there's no weight.
Right.
Your body literally becomes one with it, the environment.
You get that light feeling. That's what made me think of it as Wendy was talking about the need to float or the need to feel that lightness. Or when I had my magic mushroom experience, and I said like it's like your spirit kind of loosens and disconnects from the physical body. I think some people are their spirit is really entrenched and ensconced in their physical body, and it's quite an ordeal to get it out. Whereas some people, like maybe like Wendy, her spirit is very lightly attached to her physical body, and someone like my fiance as well, she can just have these spontaneous out-of-body experiences quite regularly. Whereas me, I read about it and I do all these techniques and I try to have an out-of-body experience, but I can't do it. It's like my spirit's, it's shut off from that. It's too connected to the physical or something, and the only way I've been able to experience.
I ordered a book called Outer Body Experience for Dummies too, and I'm trying to figure that out myself. And it kind of sucks because you can't go nowhere without them being right there, doesn't it? Like they can do that on their own. They're like, you're sitting there trying to go to the bathroom, you're like, I'm watching you. It's like, wait a minute, where did that voice come from? It's like, I'm watching you, and you're like reaching for the toilet paper, and somebody hands you the toilet paper. When you people with the outer body experiences, you really need to, come on, give me a break while I'm using the bathroom, all right? No, but you know what I mean, though. It's crazy because you want to experience that. It'd be nice to be able to have that in common, but you just don't get it. Like there's that one moment of, are we lucid enough in our thought process? Can we get there? I remember when I was younger, I felt that I could get to that mindset. I was doing some reading on Zen, very early stages, and I think the one book I actually made it through was a book called The Birds of Prey, Zen and Book of Happiness or something like that. And it was kind of defining on whether or not you were one or the other. Were you a bird of prey or were you the prey itself? Where were your eyes looking? Were they on the side of your head or were they in the front of your head? That kind of thing. And I lost my train of thought. Zen always does that to me. I think my point was, Wendy, stop looking over my shoulder when I'm using the facilities.
Don't worry, haven't done that and have no intention on that one.
Okie dokie.
No thanks, I'm good there. I really think, Eric, that you can have out-of-body experiences. Like intuitively, I feel like, and I don't usually like to read people because it's not a habit that I do on air, but every now and then I kind of get some bits and stuff, and I think that you really can. I really think that you're so intelligent and so intellectual that you're putting so much thought into it that you're not allowing yourself to let go to actually experience it.
Sounds good. Makes sense. What does that mean? Can you intellectually explain that to me?
I think that like you're basically putting too much thought into it. You're thinking about the process. This is what I need to do. These are the steps that I need to actually go through. And this is how she does it, so this is how I should be able to do it. But for every person, it's different. And I think that if you were to try to just do that after you did like a meditative kind of, I feel like you meditate, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like if you were to do that when you were in that state of a mind, when you're actually relaxed, because I feel like your mind goes 100 miles an hour and you can't stop thinking for a moment. But when you do your meditating, you get to a point where you do relax and your mind actually stops thinking. And I feel like if you're, like it actually takes place like with a subconscious mind, and you're staying in the conscious mind because you're thinking, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get to the place of no thought pretty much every morning when I do my meditation, but I never leave my body like I did that time on mushrooms, and I feel myself like my consciousness is somewhere other than, in behind my eyes.
Right, because and it's a wonderful sign of intelligence because you do think so much and you're always, it's like your brain's like a computer analyzing 100 things at a time and going back and forth and looking at what the outcome of this will be if you do this. And I think you overthink, and it's not a bad thing, it's a compliment. But I think that if you wanted to do that, you could. You just have to get to that point of where you're actually no thought going on. And that's just a hard point for you to get to.
Yeah, sounds about right.
But you definitely do have a great energy to you, and I get that you're an old soul as well.
Thanks. Yeah, I can hear it in you guys' voice. You can kind of tell just by listening to somebody that they've been here a while, type of thing, or the opposite. Sometimes you can tell that they're a newborn, so to speak.
Yeah, you definitely can. And what else did I get from you? Now, while I'm talking about this, I get a love for children, that you work with children a lot, that's like a passion of yours is working with them and helping them be the best that they can be.
I love children and animals, but I don't have any children or animals of my own. I like other people's pets and other people's children because I'm not responsible enough, I don't think, to raise my own.
Well, I disagree. I think you will. I think you will at some point. But, when you're in being surrounded by the children and stuff, you do have that ability to say, okay, go home with your mom and dad, and then you get to go home and you can think.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, if I had a child of my own, my thoughts would be theirs, right? I'd have to be involved in their activities and their thought process and their emotions all the time. And I guess I'm kind of selfish in that sense that I really enjoy my own thinking space, my own consciousness, uninterrupted by a little play. I like kids, but if not only in small doses. After a long time, I get frustrated, I guess, from having to pay attention to them so much.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely need a lot of attention.
So what league do you actually fight in? I mean, do you fight pro over there, or you fight just strictly in that area, or what's your?
No, I'm an instructor. I teach yoga, pranayama, and Wing Chun Kung Fu.
Nice.
I've thought of getting into like the MMA scene, but it's really small here, and they don't actually pay, so it's just like
right,
free.
Exactly. Wherever the money is.
Yeah.
Definitely the way to go, no doubt. Because you're not going to get your ass beat up for nothing, That's just the way it is.
Exactly. Even if you win,
the trick is just not getting your ass beat up. That's the whole point.
Right. Yeah. It's not really worth it.
Right. So how long? When did you decide to actually get into doing that? As like, all right, well, I understand the need to have a physical discipline going with a spiritual discipline. I mean, anybody who steps up into the martial arts at all, can really, really understand that. I mean, but at what age did you decide that you were serious about taking on the physical as well?
When I was 15, I started taking Taekwondo, and ever since then, I've been really big into martial arts. So it's half my life. I'm 30 now. I did Taekwondo for a few years, got my second degree black belt. I taught Taekwondo in Maine for a couple of years while I was in college, and then I met a Wing Chun instructor, and we had kind of a series of challenge fights, which proved to me that Wing Chun was far superior to Taekwondo, and so I started learning from him. And for the past 10 years, I've been training Wing Chun, and now for the past year, I've been teaching it here in Bangkok.
That's pretty incredible.
So have you always wanted to be a writer, Eric?
Yeah, yeah. So I was 5 years old, I've written stories and wanted to be an author.
What other types of books have you thought about writing besides the types that you've written already? Almost. How would you describe your books? In the complete form, the body of your work? What is it that you write for?
Um, when I was a kid, I liked writing, so I just wrote fiction stories, short stories mostly, and then in college I got into creative writing and poetry and stuff. So I wrote a lot of poetry, more short stories. Then after college, I wrote this Asbestos novella, which is kind of like a epic poem slash philosophical fiction uh, expose. I don't know how to describe it. Um, and then I found out about all these conspiracy topics and stuff when I was here in Thailand, and so that consumed me. I haven't written a single poem or any fiction or any short stories or anything since finding out
That does
this
have a way of
information.
sucking the life out of you, doesn't it?
Yeah, I used to
It
play a
does,
lot of
because you're
music
so into
too.
it's like what theories? What theories are out there? What theories are out there? There's so many of them popping up. It's just like, when it comes down to it, when you think of conspiracy, I mean, really, it's it's just a word that's attached to anything that could be considered a truth anymore. Really, it's put there by people that want you to automatically assume that whatever it is you're talking about must be bullshit because you know what I mean? Like
They
because
always
there's a
link the word
theory. Yeah, yeah.
theory
It's
with
like
it, exactly.
let's scare them into thinking it's something, that couldn't possibly be a truth because it's a theory. It's like, yeah, there's been a lot of really great truth developed through theories in human history.
And the nature of showing someone a conspiracy is that basically they've been told one thing, and you have to show several pieces of evidence against what they've been told, and everyone's subjective, everyone's different. So for you, for instance, if you think 19 hijackers and Osama bin Laden took down the Twin Towers because that's what the TV told you, then maybe I give you 10 pieces of information that counteract that story, and that's enough for you to say, hey, wait a minute, those
Right.
I've got a different theory, or I've got a different probable sequence of events that makes more sense based on the evidence that I have. And then maybe another person has 100 points of evidence, and that's enough for them. Or maybe for another person,
Right.
that's still not enough, and they're still going to believe the TV version, even though they've got 100 anomalous pieces of evidence that don't fit. They'll still stick with that story. So for everybody,
Yeah.
there's a point in which the evidence available creates a new story in their mind about what must have happened. And the mainstream media way of dismissing every other story is by calling it a theory, a conspiracy theory. Meanwhile, they just ignore all the evidence and just won't talk about any evidence that goes against their story. Theirs is the official story. They're on the official airwaves. Anyone saying anything different is a theorist. You know, you know what I mean? The neurolinguistic programming is all set there so that we're
Exactly.
marginalized and discredited.
I totally agree on that. I mean, there's just it's such an image making game from the highest levels. I mean, what is it that we buy? What is it the color that we like this week? What is it the type of cars we're going to use? Why do we not have electric cars? Why do we? There's so many more questions why than there are, to ask the questions why. I mean, than what we have in the world. I mean, the things we do have in the world have all been put here in front of us for either the reason to dumb us down, to pacify us or take our time away from us so that look over here while the right hand's doing this, the left hand is over here preparing for whatever it's preparing for, and that's on every level. I mean, really anymore these days, you have just so much going on, and when it comes right down to it, when you're where the best place to hide the truth is right in plain sight.
That's very true.
Yep.
How do you not, we all look at like 9/11, right? For example, you brought up 9/11, and I mean, I can go on for days about 9/11 too. I mean, any more who can. And I guess one of the main points I was trying to make there a second ago was that when we look at a television and the information we get from a television as our main source of news and media and our ability to see the world, then we've already lost, because it's only limited to what they're willing to show. And right there, you said it, because who owns them? Whose opinions are going to benefit? Whose opinions are going to suffer? I mean, when you're talking about the news media, you're talking about corporations that are owned by bigger corporations. You're talking about corporations on top of corporations that are owned by even bigger corporations. And when it all comes down to it, in this country and in a lot of other countries, our biggest product is war.
Yeah, it's true.
The
most profitable industry is the weapons industry.
Exactly. I mean, if you think about it, right? Think about it. Why did we need a war in Iraq? Either time. Well, let's go for the first one. Why did we need a war in Iraq? Well, because Halliburton had just developed new technology for drilling oil. Halliburton's CEO was George Cheney. Or I'm sorry, Dick Cheney. It's all same guy, George Cheney. Same dude. Same dude. You see the point, right? How it all blends into one after another. Shit. And that's why we went to war for something that, like looking back, okay, here's how crazy it is. We went to war for something that they never found. They never found weapons of mass destruction. Yet Tommy Chong was arrested in Pennsylvania for making a comment after his water pipe store got busted, or his water pipe online business got busted. They literally took all of his stuff, took all of his bongs, took all of his stuff, because he sold to a location within Pennsylvania, and it was illegal to sell transport paraphernalia in Pennsylvania. And what he said was, well, it looks like this is the only weapons of mass destruction, my bong, that's the only thing they found this year in any war, because it was the war on drugs, and then they gave him 9 months. 9 months. Yet we're going to war and we're killing entire nations simply because one of our biggest corporations has developed a new tool to suck oil out of the planet. When we could be taking, a very small amount of that money and establishing health care for people, or, just a better way of living all across the board. And we wouldn't have to rely on places like Walmart or, places like that. I don't know if you guys have that kind of world over there. Thailand is a very different kind of place than the U.S. I mean,
corporatism has sunk its teeth over here just as much so. Yeah.
So do you guys have big box type stores? Are they starting to see that kind of culture creep in?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, they've got big mega department stores like Walmart. Walmart's not here yet, but probably just a matter of time. They've got similar versions.
And how would they do that? I mean, because most of the stuff we get made is in China. I mean, where would Thailand import their stuff from if most of the stuff's made in Thailand?
Well, a lot of it's made
I bet they can get it pretty cheap there.
Yeah, I mean, the stuff that's made in Thailand you can get cheaper.
Right.
But a lot of the stuff is made in China just as well.
How do you see like the corporations and stuff there, as far as like the inbound higher levels of corporations? Like, for example, Walmart and China situation. I mean, the reason why Walmart gets their stuff so cheap is because, they literally have farms and factories established in China, with, 5, 6, 7,000 people working in them for basically nothing a day. And I'm thinking, because a lot of things are made in that part of the world extremely cheap because of the life conditions, how hard would it be for say Thailand to be affected by that big box store type environment or big box store industry? And then how sick is it that they could be sucked into it in their own society, knowing that right down the road from that store could be a location where they're making products for another type of box store, under the same conditions.
You got it. I think that's exactly what's going on here too, because Thailand, as far as Southeast Asia, they're kind of on the top of it. They're on the top of the mound of Southeast Asia, and so they get all their labor from Cambodia and Laos and Burma and all these countries surrounding Thailand, and they're looked at a lot like, say, Mexicans or Canadians are looked at by Americans, or like the Mexicans are cheap labor and Canadians are just, they don't know anything. And for Thailand, Burmese are cheap labor, and Lao, Cambodian people, they don't know anything. So they have the same kind of idea.
There always seems to be that triple nation thing. You got the redneck, you got the redneck drinkers north of you, and the people you don't want coming into your country below you.
Exactly.
It's everywhere, man. It really is everywhere.
It's just on
It's not
a
just
different
America.
scale. Right, yeah. You're also talking about how we went into Iraq for the oil. Another thing, of course, is central banking. There's only 3 countries left in the world that don't have a Rothschild central bank, and they're the most demonized countries: North Korea, uh, Syria, and Iran.
So think
And
about that. Think about what you're
and
saying there. You're basically, if we're dealing with a Rothschild established nation, say like the U.S. or England or something like that, that we have a civilized environment to live in. Whereas, if you don't have that type of banking establishment, you literally have chaos and potential upheaval at any moment. Are they really controlling that? I mean, think about how sick that is, because these people are controlling the money, controlling where it's going, controlling who's seeing it, controlling what media we see, at the same time.
debt banking usury is against Muslim code, so a lot of Muslim countries have just interest-free banks, and they didn't want a central bank, and even like in Thailand, they have the same ideals, but they're being steamrolled into not having their own banks like they always have. So a big reason why Islam is being demonized at the moment is because of their stance against usury, and the New World Order, the Rothschilds, and all these elite families that run all the banks and the media and everything. They want to have complete control of the economy in every country, so they don't want to have holdouts like Iran and North Korea and Syria showing an example of the world for what a nation can do without usury. Before now, it was like Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan. Those are the other holdouts. So you can see we're just picking off countries that don't have a central bank yet, and that's who we go in and attack next.
That's a good point. That is a good point, because it's easier to destabilize them, because there's no national structure you need to take down. It's going to affect their financial output, really.
Sure, and of course we'll give them loans all day to fight us. The same financiers financing America and Israel will finance these other people to get them into debt, and after the war, once they've destroyed their country, then they'll go onto their banking system, hugely in debt, like every other country in the world.
Exactly, and that gets them established. It's like earning their credit.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how like a lot of that falls together pretty precisely at the top levels, and a lot of the people in the middle levels who just don't get it, but they do want to get something. They tend to stop asking questions at a certain point where they feel like, oh my God, they could be my next door neighbors, or something like that, where they'll only want to learn so much.
Well, yeah,
And
the second they realize that if I take this on and I believe this, then I have to be the crazy conspiracy theorist. I don't want to do that. I don't want to play that role. I'd rather just play the mainstream idiot that defends whatever the news says. That's easier. I'm going to stick with that. You're crazy. Shut up.
Exactly, because you really feel like like, okay, I know I'm out here standing on the corner for a reason, and I know I'm pretty pissed, and all these dudes here with signs, well, they're pretty damn pissed too. So like, we're all here for the same pissed off reason, and we're wondering why the rest of you people don't see it. You see, we're not just idiots on the corner. We're pissed, and you're beeping your horn like on your way to get your coffee, and your Dunkin' Donuts munching bag on. And we're sitting out here trying to figure out why, this is happening or that's happening. And Wendy and I were just on a show over in Manchester, England a couple of weeks back. And, they're, CMR radio. Those guys are real enrooted into the, the fighting the good fight, and it's the same for those guys over there. I mean, they look at it like, at what point do you really want to practice the go ahead and kill the messenger and the message will go away routine further? I mean, it doesn't work. If we're standing here on a corner, we're here for a reason, and we're a message to not just the people who we have a problem with, but the people who we see don't want to come onto our side unless they get a little more educated. Stand here with me, pick up this rock, throw it, because that'll show them that more than one person is upset. You know, this is something that affects everybody. And I'm just talking about, you know, rebellion in general. I mean, there's so many things you could put a blindfold on, pick up a rock, spin 3 times, and wing it in any direction. You're going to find somebody who's pissed off at something.
Well, that's true. That's a good point. Although I like a more peaceful kind of way.
A more peaceful kind of way. Pin a tail on the idiot.
Hey, if that's what it takes.
Just put a rope and a tack. Come here with a hammer. Come here. It's like,
Well,
wait,
I mean,
are you supposed to have a headband on when you're actually swinging at a piñata? Yeah.
well, I agree that we need to do something, but I don't necessarily agree with throwing rocks or
No,
doing that. But
I use that as an example because like in human nature, really, I mean history, it's really where we choose to take that stand as that last resort, you know, that really defines us as the next member of the tribe to die, or the next member of the tribe to be recognized as a leader, or the next member of the big tribe to get, you know, to get their point across. Otherwise, we're just part of the masses. We're just part of the giant chicken coop that every once in a while somebody scoops us down, picks us up, sticks us on the next rack, and makes us a producer of more eggs. When in reality, we're 1 second away from getting our neck snapped and thrown in a pot.
what ideas do you have, Eric, that we could do, that people out there could do?
I have a whole podcast on my site called Solutions to the System. If you go on Atlanteanconspiracy.com, on the right side, the first video you'll see, I kind of expounded for an hour on stuff that I listed and thought that people can do in their everyday lives to counteract the system and kind of create a better paradigm. There's lots of things on different levels. I covered like health, spirituality, economics, education, media, and general activism as subtopics, and then went on from there. So, I mean, for instance, for health, you want to try to cut down on your meat and dairy, try to eat more raw food and less cooked food, try not to use all the chemical cosmetics and shampoos and soaps and everything, and use natural products instead. Get educated about GMO and fluoride and aspartame, chemtrails, and all these other things that are affecting your health, and try to counteract them with water filters and organic food and growing your own and all that kind of thing. So that's one thing, or several things that you can do in the health aspect to counteract all this negative stuff that's being pumped at you all the time. And then there's stuff you can do economically, get out of debt, find a way to stop paying taxes. Don't vote, turn off the television, don't work for corporations, don't buy from big corporations, buy from local businesses and support.
Don't kill the mom and pops.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we need. We need people to stop working for the corporations and stop buying from the corporations. So work for yourself, whatever
go back to Main Street.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever your service
gotta go back to Main.
Definitely. Yeah. There's a lot of things, and that's what I like. That's why I like to talk about the vegan message and eating peacefully and stuff, because there's lots of these little things that you don't usually think about, but they contribute to the violence and the messed up society that we live in, and you can actually make a difference every single meal. Every time you choose not to kill an animal and eat it, or enslave it so you can drink its secretions or its periods or whatever it is you're going to eat, right? Or don't vote, don't pay taxes, don't buy into the system that is enslaving you. People, right now there's an election going on and everyone's all like, oh, Romney or Obama. What does it matter? All of their paychecks are coming from the tax money that you're forced to pay. Every politician, whether it's Ron Paul or Obama, their salary, and not just politicians, everyone that works for the government, their salary is coming from the tax money that you're forced to pay. If you don't pay, you'll have your bank account seized, your house seized, you'll be put in jail. So the state uses violence, comes down on you coercively, forces you to pay them, and then these little puppets, we're going to care who's the head of the mafia. Does it matter if it's Obama or Romney? They're all going to steal your money and put it in their pockets. All governments are coercive and violent institutions. There's no voluntary government on the planet. Stefan Molyneux from Free Domain Radio talks about this a lot. Voluntarism is really important. If we're going to have governance, it needs to be voluntary governance, not this forced, enforced, taxed style of governance where you've got the police and the army ready to come down on you at any time. You've got court system, the unlawful legal system with something like 16 million laws in America now. 16 million statutes that you have to abide by, and ignorance of the law is no excuse for breaking it.
That's crazy.
Totally crazy. When in reality, like we were saying at the beginning of the show, the only real law is the golden rule, is karma, and it happens anyway. I believe that we don't need law, we don't need courts, we don't need any police, we don't need government. If somebody were to, say, murder my daughter, I would want to maybe murder them right away, right? If somebody broke into my house and killed, it would just be an instinctive thing to murder them. But based on laws, I'm supposed to leave them alone, let them escape, call the police, collect evidence, testify to a box of peers about all this, go through years and years of appeals, just so that finally some judge can decide whatever his version of retribution will be, just so that I can do the legal thing. But if that weren't the case, maybe I'd just kill him, and that would feel good. Or maybe I'd forgive him. Maybe I'd want to forgive him and do absolutely nothing, but you find that in this legal system, we can't do that either. You'd have to destroy evidence, make sure the police don't know, lie to your peers, and try to let this guy go so that he doesn't have to suffer and his family doesn't have to suffer the way that yours does. So our natural ability to right our own wrongs, or even just to forgive, has been given away to this system that pays and empowers unaffected people to deliver standardized punishment for us. Shouldn't it be our right to decide what to do in these situations? I don't want to wait for the police to do what the best they can do with whatever the law decides. I want to do the best I can do with what I decide, and my friends and my family, whether it be retribution or forgiveness.
Exactly. Why wait for the community to spend tens of thousands of dollars to respond to somebody's action when it would take a 37-cent bullet and about 30 feet of your front lawn to take care of the problem?
Sure. I'm not advocating violence.
No, I mean, me neither.
Right.
Me neither, but I mean, really, the reality is if you look at the states that have the lowest crime rate, you see the states that have the lowest crime rate here in the United States are the ones that allow carrying your own weapon. I mean,
Right.
obviously, I'm only speaking in terms of American law, because other nations have other outlooks on weapons as well. But here in the United States, I mean, you're an idiot if you're pulling a gun on somebody in Texas.
And in Arizona as well.
And in Arizona as well. Yeah, Wendy and I did a whole thing on this on this other show that I was on. Matter of fact, it was the first time Wendy and I met, and it was a whole thing about Arizona gun laws. And, really, when it comes down to it, I mean, who's going to be dumb enough to try to rob anyone when you're potentially going to be carrying, your biggest dilemma at that moment is thinking, am I carrying enough heat? Not am I carrying heat at all, but am I carrying a big enough gun to take that woman's purse? That stops you. It really does. All it takes is that moment of thought and allowing you to use free will, because you're about to use free will to do something stupid. But thought came into the game and said, whoa, hold on a second. Because it's like on a bigger scale. I mean, how do you blame one nation for having a nuclear bomb over another nation?
Right.
How does America sit in judgment, of other nations? And just because one of our presidents said, oh, wait a minute, we can't have this. We're going to, disarm all nuclear bombs. Well, okay, great, but what have we done since then? Not only have we not only just, we've developed other types of weaponry that is far more devastating than that. On a scale where, you're thinking in terms of like, you want to talk about destruction. Imagine wiping out an entire nation's ability to communicate. There couldn't be anything worse than that. How does a nation survive when they can't communicate with the next town over? You don't know if you're the last ones there. Disruption of that. I mean, you're talking about weapons out today like HARP. You're talking about things like scalar pulse weapons. You're talking about EMP weaponry, that was used in Afghanistan in '82 during the Russian-Afghanistan war. I mean, there's so many things out there that, it's easy to say, hey, well, we don't really need nukes. Those big giant bombs that are going to blow up whole countries. Well, you don't really need to have that when you're doing, surgery with a laser now, as opposed to, a katana where you're hacking a huge hole in the body to get this little wound or to get this little area of affected area. But, nowadays it's all about the surgical strike. It's all about, how do you dirty bomb a sub? Or how do you dirty bomb a subway? Or how do you know what I mean? The war has come to a smaller level. And
Yeah, now with predator drones, you got video game nerds getting paid to sit there and turn off their empathy and pretend they're playing a video game in some other country, and they're able to kill people just sitting behind a screen, right?
Exactly. And a lot of it they don't know, they don't realize. Like, have you ever seen the movie Gamer? I mean, that's where it's going. Really, that was a great film. I mean, essentially that was Gerard Butler, and he basically played a character that was a prisoner who had signed on to this kind of a video game where it was controlled by a kid in a sort of like a hologram type of an environment, and he, the other character had to literally act out everything that the other, the kid character was doing, and it was a video game. I mean, it was essentially no different than any video game we have out there. It was real war combat, and stuff was going on. I mean, people were dying in this, and we're not that far from that kind of world right now because, what do we do for entertainment as it is right now? Look what we do. We throw giant people at each other in all kinds of sports. We pit man against man, female against female in pretty much everything. I mean, Christ's sakes, we've got comedy shows about it now called like Wipeout, where they're trying to do obstacle courses. It's all about how much we can see another human suffer. It really is.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be that way. You're right.
It's true. It really shouldn't be that way. But when we look at our society and we say, I have so little respect for my brothers and my sisters that I'll spend 16 hours a day on YouTube as a youth, spending time looking at videos of people failing for, who knows how long, but teenagers today, kids today, young people today, all over the world. I mean, they're being demotivated by these bigger money families. Keep them demotivated because the more fun products we give them, the less they'll be looking at what we're really doing, which is essentially taking everything they have, taking their future, and taking any chance that they might have of a future.
Right. Tolstoy said, as long as there's slaughterhouses, there will be battlefields. You think about that, people don't really think about what they're eating. So if you can't cognitize that you're, killing a defenseless, innocent being just so that you can have an unhealthier meal than you could have if you'd not eaten meat, there's no benefit to it really, then how are we going to get to the point where we stop killing other people? Because there's plenty of reasons to kill other people. Oh, your religion. Oh, your leader's bad. Oh, you have oil. Oh, we've got all these great reasons. We don't have a single reason that shines true for why we eat animals every day, but we still do it. So I think we're at a pretty low level of consciousness about these things. So people are really involved in the story, whatever the story is, the weapons of mass destruction story, you name it, that they give us some story, some reason that we should hate these people, and then that justifies everything thereafter. Whereas if you started every day by making sure there was no violence in your life, no violence on your plate, when these stories come at you, these stories to back up some form of violence, they wouldn't ring true anymore because there's no other violence in your life. There's no violence running through your veins. When you eat an animal, the adrenaline and the hormones that are released when it's terrified at the moment it's dying, it soaks into its meat, and you eat the adrenaline, and it's in the blood as well. So I mean, you're eating that fear on a consciousness level. You're feeding on the fear of another animal. So it's in the human consciousness that this paradigm, this fear and destruction, violence paradigm, it's already in the way we eat every day. We'll be having fun and joking and smiling and laughing with our kids, but meanwhile we're chowing down on a corpse like it's nothing, with no empathy, no thought for for what's going
And we're
on.
smiling doing it. We're smiling doing it, and we're taking pictures of our children doing it, and we're
Sure, we revel in it. Every holiday we have like a specific corpse that we have to sacrifice so that we can have a good holiday. You know, a Thanksgiving turkey
beasts.
or
Yeah, the beasts they're beasts that are on display on the kitchen tables with all the, the ornamental this and ornamental that, and it's like, I mean, I can understand why somebody would do what you do. I could really, I mean, if you look at it from a sense that, like, what are we doing to these animals? I mean, what the hell are we doing, really? I mean,
10
do these
billion,
animals
10 billion
grow
animals.
just to die for us?
Yeah, 10 billion animals a year are slaughtered just so we can eat them. It's a holocaust, that they're raised right from birth just for the purpose of being killed when they're most financially viable and edible. So they're not free. They're usually confined in little cages. They get their ears clipped or their balls cut off or whatever. The female cows get raped so that by long metal instruments so that they can have milk continuously. They get their babies taken away from them so that the babies aren't drinking the milk, so that the humans can drink the milk instead. Then they chain down the babies and use those for veal. So there's this whole satanic process, this holocaust that's going on where we raise 10 billion land animals a year just so that we can eat them when we don't need to. It's complete bad science that's totally been disproven that we need meat or any sort of animal protein. In fact, animal protein is one of the things that is one of the leading killers. Heart disease, cancer, diabetes, a bunch of the top killers in America have all been linked to animal protein. I mean, there is no bad cholesterol in a plant-based diet. All bad cholesterol and heart disease and a lot of the things that are cholesterol related come from eating animals and animal products. And when you cut them out, your cholesterol drops down to next to nothing.
Wow, that is crazy. It's amazing what we go through, though, to really get the next good meal. I mean, and it really, it's just a luxury. I mean, if you think about it, when it comes down to it, there's nothing really about surviving in it anymore. I mean, you're not listening to the animal die when you kill it. You're not having to kill it yourself. I mean, it's not the same thing. You're not getting the same spiritual message out of taking your own food. So to call it hunting, like I live in an area of the country where there's a lot of hunting, eastern Pennsylvania, and geez, I mean, there's deer everywhere. I mean, and back when I first moved up into this area of the state 20 years ago, you had bigger animals. I mean, there was a lot bigger animals. Nowadays you're lucky to see a deer that's the size of an average sized dog, because so many people hunt, but when it really comes down to it, it's not the same thing as using this meat for their families. I mean, especially since the same people that are hunting are also the same guys that are running cattle farms that are doing slaughters once a year, chicken farms that are doing slaughters, daily to provide product for people. So, I mean, really, what are you doing when you're out hunting and
Right.
you have a place like that? You're just taking part in a ceremony. It's really all it is.
Right. And you're destroying life.
Yeah.
What you could do instead is garden, and you could garden enough food for all your family and for the animals that you would have been killing. So instead of killing that deer and eating it, you can even farm enough food so that deer will come and be your friend and eat the food that you've planted, and then you can create your own Garden of Eden with animals that love you and are dependent on you. They're not even your pets. They're just the local wildlife, and you're providing for them. You could do that instead of shooting them, killing them, and eating their corpse, and it would be healthier for you and healthier for the world,
Exactly.
It's true. Very true. Wendy, do you have something on nutrition or something like that?
No,
I'm going to go
good.
back through this. I'm going to go back through this, and I'm going to make sure it's all tightened up. I mean, we got probably about 2 hours right now, but I think if I go through it, we might lose about maybe no more than 5 minutes of just, maybe some dead air here or there, or, maybe a bathroom break or whatever. But,
Yeah, that's cool. That's good that you edit those little...
Yeah, we try to go through. We try to make it pretty tight and as clean as we can do it. I mean, sometimes I get a little crazy when it comes to like breaths and things because.
Oh, he's anal.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes we get some people on there that are just like So I was in the room and I walked through the room and it was it's like, okay, man, have another, it's like, holy shit. Okay, Darth, relax. You know.
Hey, we love our guests.
We do. I love all of our guests. They make for some great comedy sometimes when they don't expect it. But none of the ones
Absolutely.
I've actually interviewed, so that takes me off the hook.
So, what do you think, Eric? Is there anything that you really wanted to cover that we tend to get off topic, as you see? So, is there anything that we like didn't get in that you really, really wanted to be in?
Covers lots of stuff. Great. I like doing it this way anyway. More of the conversational, lead it where it's gonna go type of thing. I think it makes for better listening than the question and answer interview monologue format.
Right, because you never know where it's going to end up going, and that's the point. And that's what people want to hear. They don't want to hear a standard format of anything, really. They just want to know, am I going to be entertained for an hour or two?
Mm.
You know,
And
really is all.
educated. I think, just getting some really important information out there, but do it in, like you said, a relaxed way.
Exactly. So I'll tell you what, Eric, if you want to just go through your personal information, not, leave out social security number and blood type and all that crap, but talk about your website real quick, where we can get in touch with, where some of the fans can hook up with some of your products maybe, or get to know you a little better through your website, or even if they're lucky enough to be in that area and might be able to hook up on one of your personal training, adventures that you do there. I like the one ad. It was like, yes, and, include bus fare and a taxi ride and a cheesesteak and meet me in the park at 11. I was like, yes, Stu's got the right idea, man. Feed me lunch, hook me up with a taxi ride, and we're good. And I will meet you
Yeah.
in the park for some peaceful, tranquil moments.
Yeah, I train a lot of people in public parks here in Thailand. The way I
That's
do the pranayama, yoga, and Wing Chun is just private lessons. So people contact me, and I either go to their house, apartment, condo, or some nearby park, or they can come to a field near me if they want to. And yeah, I have them pay for my taxi ride, and then
oh yeah, no doubt.
I love
No
that.
doubt.
That's great.
It's the only
I
way to do
missed
it.
that part somewhere.
Yeah, it
it's
was
great
on his
for
website. It was on your website.
it's great for them too, though, because a lot of people don't have time to attend a martial arts class after work or whatever, and it's real convenient for me to be. I mean, a lot of times they get home from work and they schedule so that I'm there right when they get home, and then they do their 2 hour session and they're already at home to have a shower and eat and do everything. So as opposed to if they had to go to a class and get involved that way and come home and whatnot. So I go to them instead of them having to come to me. So anyway, that's BangkokWingChun.com if anyone's in Bangkok and interested in yoga, Wing Chun, or pranayama lessons. And AtlanteanConspiracy.com is my main website. There's links to everything from there. My 3 books, you can download 2 of them for free, or you can buy hard copies from Lulu. Links all on there. So yeah, AtlanteanConspiracy.com and BangkokWingChun.com. You'll be able to find everything from there.
Perfect.
Great. We'll make sure that we put those links on our site as well
Absolutely.
when we do a write-up for you. And Max, I'd like to also see if you wouldn't mind putting his website and stuff throughout the show, like maybe the beginning and the middle as well.
Absolutely.
That would probably be better.
Yep, no problem.
Okay, great.
No problem.
Sounds good.
So Eric, real quick before you go, if you had the most important message of everything that you said today for people, if you could tell them to do one thing, I know we asked this in the beginning of the show, but we've covered a lot of topics and we want to make sure that they're on it with us. But the most important thing you could do as a person to give back to the world right now, what would it be?
No pressure.
Right. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, it's a good one. We're all trying to answer this. No pressure. Tick tock, tick tock.
that, for an extended answer, that Solutions to the System podcast on my website goes into it. But for a one answer that you're looking for, I'd say just try to eat less animal products. Eat as little animal products as you can. You'll be amazed what that can do for both your health and for everyone else, the health of the planet, environmentally, and the animals.
Great.
Sounds great.
Definitely. And Eric, I want to thank you so much for spending time with us. It was wonderful talking with you.
You too. You guys are great. It was fun.
Thanks a lot, Eric. We appreciate you coming in.
Thanks.
And everyone out there, have a wonderful evening, and thank you for listening to Inner Circle. Lightwaves Radio is for all seekers of truth and anyone who seeks to understand the many mysteries of our place in the cosmos and life itself. We explore a variety of topics that we feel are most urgent and valuable at this time and strive to find real truth and solid answers through contemplating, sharing, and exploring experiences and understanding of the bigger picture.
We live in an incredibly exciting, new, and even awkward time in the history of our planet. History has been written and rewritten in so many ways, and truth hidden for so many reasons. It is a very real challenge to discern what is real and what is programmed in our society and lives. Together and through our mutual explorations and discussions, we have the ability to elevate our understanding and raise the frequency of our planet to a level that literally assists the evolution of humankind. There is so much we can do to make a difference for ourselves, our lives, and our future within the greater universal reality. Please join us in this journey of discovery.
Evolve your truth.
We are all here for a purpose. Let us discover what is within us and what we are yet to discover from without us.